A lot of people want to know how to improve their confidence level in their mixes, in what they're doing. How do they get their confidence high enough where when somebody says they don't like it, it doesn't bother them? It's a very common question. I find that the answer to this is simple. One, you have to understand the playing field of the world you live in. You make mixes, that means you're making abstract art. That's what you're doing. There's no defined right, there's no wrong, there's only your opinion and their opinion. That's all there is. So, because you live in this world where there's no clear definition of right and wrong, you also have to take into account that it's just like speaking. If you have an argument with anybody, I'm sure everyone's been through this. When you're arguing, the person you're arguing with is going to interpret what you say and then respond to what you say. And some of that is not what you said. How often does this happen? You'll say something, they interpret it however they interpret it, and then they tell you what you said, and it's not even close to what you meant. It's not what you said. The words could have been close, but they just grabbed whatever they grabbed, and that's how they're interpreting it. This basically breaks down to people's ability to process what they're hearing. That's really what it is. If you give a speech to 30 people and then you asked each person to recount that speech, what was said, they'd all give you a different recount of what it was that was said. No two people are going to have the exact same definition of what was said. So what does this mean? It means that we live in a world of generalities and averages, and that's the truth. Most people will understand you if you are a good communicator. Most people will like your mixes if you're a good mixer, but most is certainly not all. And all of this is determined by their emotional state. The emotional state of the listener determines whether they like it or not. It determines how they hear what you are feeding them, whether it's communication or a mix. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. What they hear gets interpreted through their filters of where their mind is at that moment when they heard it. This also impacts you as a mixer because you are someone who's making decisions based on what you're hearing, and that is all being filtered through your emotional state of how you feel and anything that happened that day that may be distracting you or weighing on your conscience where you're now thinking, subconsciously. You're not like, it's not like you're trying to think of it, but it's in there, and that might be distracting you or bringing you towards doing things you might not have done otherwise. This is all part of this abstract world we live in as mixers or people who produce music. This is all, we live in this intangible, constantly transforming world. That's what it is. So knowing that, you have to realize that the key to building confidence is to actually find the people who hear music like you hear it. And the better you are at mixing, the more people will understand your mixes and like them. Just like the better you are at communicating, the more people will understand what you're trying to say when you're having a conversation and respond to it in a way that is echoing what you said and not what you didn't say. But there's always still that human filter that changes slightly based on person to person, everybody and their experiences in life and their emotional state at that moment. So it's this constantly moving thing, but the truth is the confidence develops because you've done enough work with enough people to get to a point where your average sample size of how many people like your stuff is great enough that you can actually find the people that like it and are the ones that hear like you do. In other words, the ones that hear music the way you do means when you make mixed decisions that sound good to you, it also sounds good to them. You only get to a point where there's enough of those people out there that you will have confidence once you've done enough work. So there's no way around doing enough work. And in the process, through the course of doing enough work, you will certainly discover people who don't hear music the way you do, people whose emotional state makes it where they don't like anything. This is what's going to happen. So don't let that get to you. The trick is to have enough people who do hear the way you do that it makes you confident. And you do get that by doing enough work and doing it very well to the best of your ability. But there's no point in trying to make everyone hear the way you do. Just like there's no point when you're having an argument, if somebody's interpreting everything you're saying through their own filter and it's totally not what you said, If you just keep saying, I said this, and then they say you'll never find a common ground of understanding because they're not hearing what you're saying. You're saying something, they're translating it in their own head to making it something different and saying that's what you said. That's an unwinnable argument. Just like when you're mixing for somebody who doesn't hear music the way you do, that's an unwinnable client. An unwinnable, situation where now no matter what you do, they won't like the work anyway because you guys just don't hear music the same way. And you should realize that that's very, like, everyone hears different. We all interpret different. So this is very common. But what you'll find is if you are great and you become somebody who knows what they're doing when they're mixing, you'll get most people to like it. Now, most, an average, a lot. So, that's what I mean. There's always those outliers that won't. There's always people who won't hear the way you hear, and you can't change that no matter what you do. So don't let that affect you because your mental state matters just as much when it comes to you making decisions that you will then be happy with later. And you will look at the work you did and say, I like this. This is great. Whereas if you have a mental state that's all over the place, you can't possibly put the focus you need in to deliver the kind of work that you will like later. So what makes you think they're going to like it? Like, it's one of those things where you got to like it. Your filter is all that matters when you're doing the work. What it sounds like to you, how to make it great to you. You're doing all that, and you're hoping the person you're working with hears in the way you do. Those are the clients you'll keep forever. And anyone who mixes, I find people don't like to really tell you that this is the case, but nobody bats 1,000 when they mix. Nobody has had every single client they've ever sent a mix to love it. It's just not what happens, not even on the highest levels. It's not what happens. The people who like the stuff are the ones that wind up listening the way you do. They hear music the way you do. And the ones that can't possibly, there's such an opposite on two sides of the spectrum of where they hear and where you hear, you're never going to make them happy, no matter what. So don't keep making endless revisions and things for people like that. Just figure out who that is, and then you don't have to work with those people. But you will be able to work with everyone who hears like you. Find as many of them as possible. That's what I call like your listeners. Find the people that are artists that will work with you, that love the way you make stuff because you guys hear music the same way. And they're out there. If you do enough work, you will find them. I promise you. Because this is a thing. The better you are, the more of those people exist. But in order to get those people to be confident in you, you need to be doing great work consistently. Because even if somebody loves what you do once, the second time you do something, they may not love it. So unless you're developing consistency in your work, where every time you're doing stuff and delivering it, it's really something that's the best you could do. Now you may get to a point where they really trust what you're doing, and then it becomes easier. It becomes easier when people realize you guys hear music the same way, and they want to work with you because they probably dealt with people who don't hear music the same way they do, and they don't like the results. So the people you wind up working with are the ones who hear the music like you do. All right, so in this abstract world, we must find the people who actually can translate what we're doing in a way that they hear and the communication is direct and clear and accurate. Find those people. That's the way that you'll develop confidence, because the more work you do for people like that, it's hard not to have confidence when you get people who love your work over and over and over and over again. And the only way you do is to get enough people. Because if you only did 5 things in your whole life and 2 people hated it and 3 loved it, you ain't got no confidence. If you got a lot of people out there who hear the way you do, now you'll have confidence. Trust me, you will. It may not seem like it at first, but you will build to this confidence because of the amount of work you do that is well received by the person who has hired you. It's as simple as that. So let's not overcomplicate it. Let's just realize more work is better. That's the bottom line. So get done with more things. You'll find more people who will actually like what you're doing. Also, everything to the best of your ability, always. Also, your filter is all that matters. You can get a sense of what they're looking for before you start, but once you go into it, you have no choice but to listen to yourself and your opinions of what is better and what is worse, and then whatever happens based on what they say when they hear it, once you send it out, Whatever happens, happens. And then you basically, when they tell you if they want this changed a little, that changed a little, you make the tweaks. But that's basically, if it's just a little tweaks here and there, they still love what you did. You got to realize that. If it's somebody who won't talk to you about nothing, you guys probably don't hear music the same way because they have no way to explain to you the difference, or they're just not that into their own project that they can't put the time in to tell you what's wrong, or they just, it could be so many things. You could hear music so differently that you got no shot. So don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. Just realize if an orator got up there and gave a speech to all these people, only one or two, there's a certain amount that won't get it and will completely be wrong on what the translation is of what you said. They won't have any idea what it was. They won't get it. And then a lot of people will. And the ones that do, those are the people, just like with mixes. Think of it the same way. It's never been a thing where a person gave a speech and every single person understood exactly what was said. Never happened. So what makes you think it's going to happen with mixes? It's not. So don't expect that, and then you won't be disappointed. All right? Do me a favor. Throw something in the comments that sort of either echoes this or gives me some kind of ideas, because your ideas are great. And what you guys throw in there, that's what I pick from when I make my videos. So I really appreciate it. I read all of them. See you guys soon. Everybody just take this in. Trust me, this is how you develop confidence, all right? Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. Subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. Just remember, you guys got this. Take it easy.